Have you ever dreamed of creating your own video game but thought it was too hard, too expensive, or too impossible? What if I told you that right now, today, you can start making your first game without knowing how to code, without spending a fortune, and without waiting years to learn the skills? Hi! If you're new here, I'm Rafał Bremski and I've been a professional game developer for about 9 years. I've worked on AAA titles, released my own indie games, and throughout my career, I've made every mistake in the book. And I'm gonna share them with you so you don't have to make those mistakes as well. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to go from zero to game developer, step by step. Whether you are a complete beginner or just looking to sharpen your skills, by the end of this video, you will know how to start making games and maybe even turn it into a full-blown career. One crucial thing I wish I would know when I was starting out is that you don't need to know how to program or create assets like 3D models or 2D art to start making games. Today, the barrier to entry for creating games is lower than ever. Tools like Unreal Engine, Unity, and Godot, along with various asset creation tools, enable complete beginners to dive into game development without spending years learning programming or obtaining a degree in art or design. If you're aiming to work for a game development studio, a university degree might seem helpful, but is often not required. Throughout my career, I've never encountered a situation where a degree was mandatory to apply for a job. For those interested in studio positions, I've created a separate video on my channel that you can check out after this one. Many topics I'll discuss here can also enhance your prospects of working in a company, as solo game development helps build a personal portfolio, which is the best way to break into the industry. Before diving into creating your game, you need to decide on the platform you're targeting. For your first solo project, releasing on Steam or mobile platforms is generally the best idea. While developing for consoles, like the recently announced Switch 2, is an option, it involves a lengthy application process and acquiring specific hardware called dev kits for testing. Defining your platform early is crucial, as it will influence game design, especially regarding user input. Playing with a controller or mouse and keyboard makes for completely different experience, as well as using touchscreen is completely different experience to those two. Once you have chosen your platform, decide on the type of game you want to create. This can sometimes be trickier than you might think. New developers often design games that are fun to make rather than fun to play. I made the same mistake when I was starting out with some of my mobile projects. For example, one of the games I made was a Christmas Factory, an idle game in which you manage a toy-making factory, employ new elves, and manage the toys production pipeline. This was a game that was very entertaining to make. Thinking of how to implement a system for managing AI systems for my elf workers was something that gave me a lot of fun. It was a puzzle for me as a developer, but turned out to be not so fun to play when I eventually released the game. Me as a developer had all the fun with not much entertainment left for the players. And that led to very poor reception and low sales of the game. In my other project, Starway Deadly Atmosphere, I took a different approach. I analyzed popular mobile games and incorporated engaging mechanics suited for mobile devices. Once I knew what things players like, I used it as a main design mechanic in my game. This time I still had a ton of fun making the game, but that flipped my thinking upside down and taught me that when thinking of a new project, you should always start with what your end user will like to play. Start with the player, not with what you want to do as a developer. Another important aspect when thinking of a project you want to make is market saturation. From a business perspective, there are two main strategies: red ocean and blue ocean. Red ocean refers to markets crowded with similar games, competing for an already established audience. These games often stick to well-known genres and mechanics. For example, titles like Fortnite and Apex Legends both target fans of battle royale games, while the Elden Ring and Lies of P appeal to those who enjoy challenging action RPGs. Blue Ocean, on the other hand, describes markets with little or no competition. Games in this space offer unique experiences, creating new demand rather than competing for existing players. Minecraft, for example, introduced a completely new genre of survival crafting, and Undertale brought non-violent mechanics into traditional RPG gameplay. As an indie developer, aiming for the blue ocean is often the best way to go. Without the vast resources of major studios, offering a fresh perspective or a unique twist can set your game apart. Luckily, there are specific tools and techniques to come up with innovative ideas for a game. I've made a separate video on this topic, so be sure to check it out. For a solo developer, it is also extremely crucial to keep your project's scope manageable. As a solo developer, consider creating a game that players can complete in 3 to 5 hours, or a game with replayable elements like a roguelike or some endless mechanics. Starting with a massive 20 hours narrative epic can be overwhelming and may not be feasible for your first solo project. Look at what other solo developers have accomplished with their initial projects and adjust your game's scale accordingly. Now let's talk about the Game Design Document, or the GDD. This document outlines your game's vision, mechanics, story, and the development plan. Even as a solo developer, writing down your ideas helps clarify your vision and serves as a reference throughout development. Remember, the GDD is a living document, meaning it will evolve as your project progresses. Initially, focus on the core concepts and avoid going super deep into every aspect upfront, especially about the gameplay part of your game. Many of those specifics will come clearer during prototyping and testing, and it's generally advised they emerge from your iterations on a living thing rather than being decided upfront in the GDD. Maintaining a game design document is crucial, especially if you plan to expand your team and project. A well-structured GDD effectively communicates your ideas. Whether you are bringing someone new onto your team or presenting your game to a publisher. For creating your GDD, there are several tools that can enhance collaboration and organization. Confluence offers organized structures with collaboration features. Notion provides flexibility and a visual approach. Miro is an online whiteboard tool that allows teams to brainstorm, plan projects, and collaborate visually. These tools can help you create a dynamic and collaborative GDD, ensuring that your game's vision is clearly communicated and easily accessible to all people involved. If you're working on a game during personal time, after work, school, or on the weekends, aim to complete your first solo project within a year. Once you know what type of a game you want to make, it is time to pick the engine you will use to make it happen. There are a few alternatives out there, and to be completely honest, for indie development, it doesn't really matter which one you'll choose. Although there are certain things that you can consider that can help you pick the engine that will be the most convenient for you. If you are aiming at a 2D game, I would strongly recommend going with Unity or Godot, as in my experience, those engines offer an easier way of producing 2D content. Unreal Engine will come in handy if you're thinking of a top-down, first or third-person perspective 3D projects with custom cinematics and systemic gameplay. But Unity will be a good choice for such project as well. Once you finish your first project in one of the engines and you'll know a little bit more about the technicalities of making games, you'll realize some of the things that the engine you picked does better for the projects you want to make, such as the rendering pipeline or memory management. But in my opinion, at the beginning of your journey, you should rather focus on which tool is easier to learn for you. The main difference between those engines is the way you develop your game. Unreal Engine is famous for its visual scripting tool, Blueprints, while Unity utilizes C# as its scripting language. Do not get scared about any of these tools. Scripting in Unreal's Blueprints or C# for Unity doesn't mean you will have to spend months to learn how to code. I'm planning on a separate series on this channel in which I will teach you how to start making games in Unreal Engine and Unity from scratch. So make sure to subscribe not to miss out. But if you don't want to wait on that and you want to jump into learning right now, my friend Devin is one of the best Unreal Engine developers I've ever met. And he actually streams content from which you can learn a lot. So I'll put a link in the description, be sure to check him out. Once you know which engine you'll be working in, it's generally a good idea to create a few small prototypes that align with your game's design. For example, if you're developing a 2D platformer, start with a simple project where a basic shape jumps between platforms. This practice helps you familiarize yourself with the engine and develop essential scripting skills, making the main project less scary. When you are ready to begin your primary project, start fresh. Even if you are building upon previous prototypes or game jam projects, creating a new project ensures a clean structure and organized code, which is crucial for larger projects. This is also a very good moment to hook up a version control for your project. Version control acts as a safety net, tracking every change you make, so you can revert to earlier versions if needed. For solo developers, Git is a free and popular option. However, if you're working with large files, especially in Unreal Engine, Perforce might be more suitable due to its handling of big assets, like textures and models. Version control is invaluable. For instance, if you accidentally break your character animations or corrupt a level file, you can easily restore to previous working version. And if you decide to make your project with other people, version control is the only proper way to exchange project files and add new content to the game. So make sure you set up version control for your project before you go deeper into it. Now it is time to discuss one of the biggest and most expensive parts of your project, the game assets. People come to game development with various backgrounds. I have seen 3D artists, animators, and even architects or doctors start their game dev journey with specific set of skills.
But what I do have are a very particular set of skills.
That they can utilize when working on a game. If you already have some experience creating assets like 2D art, 3D models, animations, music, or anything else that your project will need, you will be able to utilize your skills when making the project. But for everything else, you will most likely use assets made by other people. Do not be afraid to use assets from various sources. As long as it fits the design of your game and you are not breaking any copyrights, you should utilize assets created by specialists in that field, rather than spending weeks on learning how to do it yourself. Making games requires a ton of various skills, and you shouldn't expect to fit all the necessary asset creation needs in your project. Most of solo game developers that succeed with a commercial title use assets from various sources. And remember that even if you are using an asset that you got from an external source, you can still tweak it or change how it looks visually to fit your project better. Here are some of the sources where you can find assets for your game. If you're using Unreal Engine, you should check out Fab. It is Epic Games' unified marketplace that brings together a massive library of assets for game development. You will find everything from 3D models and textures to animations, sounds, and effects. If you're using Unity, you can also access Fab, but you've got the Unity Asset Store as well, which has a huge selection of assets made specifically for Unity projects. If you need 3D models outside of those, sites like TurboSquid, Sketchfab, and ArtStation have plenty to choose from. For 3D animations, Mixamo is a great free tool that provides rigged character models and animations ready to use in your game. If you're looking for sound effects or music, Pond5 and Epidemic Sound are solid options. And if you need UI elements like icons, Noun Project is a good place to look. If you ever find yourself stuck with coding or need some custom assets, you can hire freelancers on Fiverr to help out. If you know some other sources for assets that I didn't list here, please put them in the comments and I'll be very grateful to put them on my personal list. I also really recommend using AI tools to speed up programming or even generate assets for your game. Just keep in mind that AI-generated assets are best used only during the prototype phase rather than in your final game. If you want to dive deeper into how AI can help you in game development, I've made few videos covering that. Links are in the description. If you're serious about releasing your game as part of your business strategy, an interesting approach is to start with a small but highly polished initial showcase demo that shows off your game's core appeal. That might be its unique art style, an engaging mechanic, or interesting story hook. In this approach, instead of building complex systems from the start, you should focus on making a short, controlled experience that highlights the best parts of your idea. If you are making a horror game, for example, your demo doesn't need a full AI system or fully developed gameplay mechanics. A single moody hallway with flickering lights, a shadow passing in the distance, and one well-timed scary event can be enough to sell the vision. The goal of this first showcase demo is to create a high-quality video showing your game in action. You can then test the market by sharing it with your friends, posting it on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube, and seeing how people react to it. If you get a strong response, it's a good sign that your game has a lot of potential. Another thing to consider at this point is starting a YouTube channel early in your development. Posting devlogs about your progress can help to build a community around your game from the very start. And who knows, YouTube could end up being an extra source of income along the way. And extra money in game development is never a bad thing. Regardless of whether you will decide to build this initial showcase demo or not, one of the most valuable things you can do is talk about your game idea with as many people as possible. A lot of developers keep their ideas secret, afraid that someone might steal them. But in reality, ideas are cheap. It's the execution of the ideas that matters. No one will make your game exactly the way you envision it. Well, only you can do it. Getting feedback early on will improve your idea, and you can do this by discussing it with friends, family, or game dev communities online. Once you start turning your idea into something playable, the next big milestone is a vertical slice. This is a fully playable chunk of your game that shows off its core mechanics, its visuals, and overall feel of the game. It's like a mini version of your final game. In this demo, there are no shortcuts like in the first initial showcase. The goal is to have something that others can play and give feedback on. This is also when you should lock in your core mechanics. After this stage, you don't want to be making huge changes to the gameplay loop. Instead, you'll be focusing on adding new levels and content that build on what's already there. One of the best things you can do at this stage is playtest your game as much as possible. Companies like Valve rely heavily on playtesting throughout the development, and you should do it too. Share your game with friends, your community, or other developers. Many game developers hesitate to show their work before it's perfect. But trust me, you need that feedback way before that point. Watching someone else play your game will reveal problems you might never notice yourself. And speaking of playtesting your game, there is also a trick that some professional user experience labs use. It boils down to starting feedback sessions with questions about aspects you are almost sure are done in a good way. For instance, if you're looking for an input on your game's combat system, begin by asking about the obviously pretty character design or another aspect of the game you know your testers will like. This initial positive feedback makes testers more comfortable sharing honest thoughts on other areas of the game. If you are keen to dive deeper into how game studios gather feedback, I've got another video planned on this topic. If your game has RPG elements, the vertical slice stage can be tricky. RPG mechanics are often tweaked right up until launch, and they don't always shine in a small demo. A good approach is to isolate specific RPG systems and test them separately. Then use that data to estimate how well they will work when everything is combined. Once you have a solid and polished vertical slice that you have refined with feedback, it is time to start promoting your game. If you're launching on PC, set up a Steam page with eye-catching screenshots and a good gameplay video. Use your vertical slice as a demo to attract players and start building your wishlists count. But also, you will use this demo to gather more feedback on things to improve and bugs to fix. By now, you should have some kind of audience through your social media or devlogs, so make sure they know that they can now wishlist your game on Steam. A really smart move at this point is to submit your game to events like Steam's Next Fest or the Independent Games Festival. Many indie games have blown up thanks to these events, so they are worth looking into. This is also when you might want to think about funding. Crowdfunding on platforms like Kickstarter can be a great way to raise money while also marketing your game. Another option is pitching to publishers, and having a solid and polished vertical slice demo makes a huge difference in those conversations. Nowadays, publishers don't really want to discuss game ideas if there is no demo on the table, but I'll be making a separate video about setting up your own indie studio, where I will dive deeper into preparing to pitch to your game publisher. Showcasing your game at events can be a good move, but there are a few things to watch out for. I do not recommend getting a booth at a major gaming expos. It is expensive and the exposure isn't always worth it for a solo developer. Instead, consider smaller, local events. These are often much cheaper and sometimes they are even free, and they will give you the chance to watch people play your game in real time. One thing to be careful about at events is giving away or selling your game codes. Game selling pages like Steam have some policies that sometimes make it hard for people to leave reviews on games they got as codes, so it's usually better to encourage people to buy the game directly and leave a review after the release. You really don't want to miss out on that initial boost of reviews when your game launches. From here until launch, your main focus should be gathering continuous feedback and growing your wishlists count. At some point, you might consider early access, but remember, your game only gets one big launch. If you go into early access, make sure the game is in a state that will keep players engaged and excited for what is coming next. Once your game is out, it doesn't mean you are done with it as a developer. Continuous patching and improvements is something that you need to plan out as indie. After release, you will most likely be flooded with comments about bugs you never caught in the development phase. Building on your game's content will also greatly benefit its lifetime sales, so make sure you don't abandon your project the moment you click that release button and pop up a champagne. Hopefully, this video helped you understand how to go from an idea to a finished game. If you found it useful, leave a like and share it with your friend. Maybe you know someone that also considers a career as a solo developer. I've got more videos planned to go even deeper into solo game development, so make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!